I call them initiations. It's like the ultimate dojo. When life's getting tough and you're getting thrown curveballs and like everything's falling apart, that's when you get to really see what you're made of.
Why is feeling actually healing it?
Well, emotions are energy in motion, so it wants to move through us. I see emotions as a messenger, right? And there's certain messages and energy that we try to resist because we've heard it's bad or it's too painful or we're afraid of it. And so the irony is by resisting it, stays stuck as issues in our tissues. And it'll keep getting poked and prodded and triggered by our teachers, family, friends, guy that cuts you off on the road, sparks some anger, you know. So every time we get triggered, it's an opportunity for healing. But not a lot of people know how to process that in a constructive way. I think more and more people are learning that, luckily, but it's otherwise the triggers just keep going as long as we're holding on to that. So an example would be, you know, someone that's repressing anger goes to a party, is having a blast, and then somebody else that's repressing anger confronts them and starts some fighting words, and a brawl breaks out. And the guy was like, man, why did I get messed with? I wasn't doing anything. I was having a good time. It was because of that repressed anger that's attracting anyone else that has that same, you know, like attracts. And then we get to see the expression of it.
What's a constructive way to process those emotions? Like that example is deconstructive, right? Because I often get this question, right? You tell me to feel it, but how do I fucking feel it, right? Like, what's a constructive way to actually process and feel emotions that we don't deem as positive or self-serving?
Yeah, so like I said, the irony is what we try to resist just persists and stays stuck in us. So actually by giving it our attention, if it's a messenger, then it's like, well, let's listen to see what the message is, you know? And when we do that, it actually gives it the ability to dissolve. Like it can move through us all the way. And, you know, Joseph Campbell has a great quote. It's like, any emotion that you feel all the way through is bliss. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like coming back to bliss after you let yourself fully feel it. And so so the first thing is I use breath technique. It's one of the tools right under our nose, right, to help slow things down so you can actually see like where this trigger, this feeling is showing up within your system. And then you can tune into the intelligence within your body. Where it's showing up is giving us clues, right? If it's throat's tight or constricted, you know, where are we not fully letting ourselves express? If it's the gut, you know, second chakra, it's like, oh, where are we, you know, courting and giving our energy to other people? So there's a lot of different clues we can get just from the body, but by being with it and allowing yourself to feel that, like just observing it, you know, and seeing, eventually it will dissolve and move through. But emotions like anger, it can be like a volcano, you know, like liquid magma that has to erupt somewhere, right? So when we try to repress that, it ends up getting put onto our loved ones usually. It's like we're short with them, we're snappy, you know, yell or have outbursts that say things we don't mean. Because we're trying to hold down this energy that wants to be expressed. So I got into boxing. I channeled that into working out and sometimes like breaking stuff, you know, like tuning into what was needed. So having a container where you can express those emotions and you know, there's a way to set it up, play a playlist that helps you access that, whether it's like primal drums or, you know, some Eminem music that helps you access that anger and then allow for, if it's throat, a Viking roar or 5, you know, and just giving your body what it's already knows how to do. It's just process and release.
I had this conversation with a guest right before you. I'm curious your perspective on it. Is that what's the line in the sense of at what point are you over-identifying with your feelings, right? 'Cause I think in the journey of healing, once you've been repressing or ignoring or numbing yourself for so long, there is a period of time where it's crucial and essential to feel things. But for me, and we welcome disagree, it might reach a point to me where it can just get to a point where you're like, I'm not doing this shit, right? If it's a trigger over and over again, you're experiencing it and you're feeling it. To me, it's like if you're comfortable and you processed it, is there ever a line where you can be like, I'm driving this ship. I can't keep doing this shit. I can't keep fucking feeling angry over the same thing over and over again. Like, do you think there's a line at some point in our evolution spiritually where we get to a point where we're like, I'm not identifying with this anymore. I'm not like, I've felt this for 5 years and it's ruining my life. Like I have to move forward. Is there ever a line where you as the egoistic driver in this body can be like, I'm not doing this shit anymore? Or is it reduced to, if it's still feeling it for you, you have to feel it? Like, what's the line there?
Yeah, we don't get to outrun emotions, but you can change your relationship with them. Like my relationship with anger is actually really nice. It's
It's an interesting word to use for anger. It's nice.
Yeah, it is nice because it's a deep primal energy that I know I can use if I need to protect my family, if I need to declare boundaries, or if I'm just, not willing to tolerate something anymore. It's a valuable human emotion and energy for that. And we've seen the destructive side of anger all too much. So really everything's about relationships. So if you can improve your relationship with anger, then maybe even grief, you can just see it as a messenger, and like I've found the beauty in grief after losing both my parents. It was sitting in the depths of emotions that I'd never gone to before, just allowing myself to finally like ugly cry, while I'm next to my father and I know it's his last few hours, while his friend's playing the guitar, this song called Let It Flow. And it was like, I remember that was probably the ugliest cry I've allowed people to see. And in the depths of it, I recognize this is actually really beautiful to get to show my father how much he means to me, with liquid emotion. And that, I just found that there was beauty in that. And before I'd been afraid to go to those depths of grief because it was so uncomfortable. So found some bliss there too. And ironically, feel like that was the same emotion that my father had trouble, resolving and feeling through all the way. I only remembered him crying once when my grandpa passed. And I remember asking him, Dad, what do you miss most about Grandpa? And he said, I just miss being able to pick up the phone and call him and kind of shoot the shit and talk football, just check in with him, And I'm so glad. I was really young when I asked him that, but I was glad I did because I remembered that answer. And I made sure to always check in with my dad, every week. And I got to an evolution where, there was a point when there wasn't a lot of hugs or I love yous with my dad. It was a lot of headbutting. So I just feel grateful that I got to a place where, we both had our hearts open enough to really get to express, I got to share everything on my heart, how much he means to me and all the ways he's impacted me before he left this planet. So that was a gift, and it's inspired me to go like deeper into all the emotions, even anxiety.
Grief's an interesting one. I lost a parent as well. In that it's like there are two sides to grief where I think I'll always miss my mom, what I've deduced and thought about is that like if I make the grief mean something negative and painful, right? Like, how could this happen? How could they leave? How could God do this? This is so painful, this is miserable. That's one way of viewing grief, right? But if I make it mean in my mind, how lucky am I to have experienced, I love them so much. They're so great. Like, oh wow, I still miss them, right?
Yeah.
But that's the key difference I see in people grieving, right? Because I experience my family, right? Like each family, it's interesting in families because each family member makes it mean something different. You can see the effect of that in their vibration in their life.
Yeah.
And the ones I see who make it mean something miserable and like horrible, like their whole life becomes like, then the person you love so much who died is now causing you misery all the time. So it's like, but you're still feeling that same emotion.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So what's like the most practical way to go about grief in that sense? Is do you go like, what I did is I went like a couple of weeks of ugly, like fuck, I let myself be that victim and angry. And once that, my system cleared out, I was like, I'm going to do my best to be positive about this, to like feel it, but be like more like, oh wow, I love them so much. I miss them. She was a great mom, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's beautiful. Like I said, like everybody has their own way of dealing with grief. And so there's no like right or wrong way, but by feeling it fully and allowing those parts, you know, I had some hatred towards God when I lost my mom, and so that helped me. It was like the ultimate contrast, you know, of like being that lost and not fully understanding, to thanks for the contrast, so that on the other side of grief, like there's actually more joy and like higher levels of bliss and pleasure if we're willing to go to the depths of grief.
Why is that? Do you think it can be explained just as simply as a contrast? Like, why is it that when we go into depths of grief, you can experience the heights of joy?
It's interesting, right? We're here on Earth, this 3-dimensional plane, and it's Contrastville. You know, we get to experience light and dark, and good and bad. And, you know, I don't feel like we experience that, you know, when we're in energetic form and just soul, spirit. And so that's why there's the saying that the gods envy humans, because they die. And that makes everything up until then so much richer, you know, like it's like the taste and the flavors and the experiences of life, like so rich. So I mean, imagine how many souls are excited to come into this human experience. You know, even though we have a lot to complain about here, it's when we remember that, it's like, oh yeah, there's more reasons that I came here now, and get to enjoy these sensory suits, you know, while we're here for such a short time.
Are you at peace with the darkness of reality?
Yeah, I mean, that's if it wasn't for the darkness, then I don't feel like we would have the same level or acceleration of evolution for our souls.
Where I'm at, I don't know if you experience this, I'm at deep peace with my own darkness. I have a hard time with the darkness of humanity.
Yeah.
That's what I've struggled with. How have you reconciled with that?
Totally. So I try to see, like, where is that still in me? Like the parts of me that I can't stand, or that I don't like, or those are usually the parts that need the most love. And, you know, there are some pretty sinister humans, that like souls that came into this to play a role of darkness, doing some very evil things. And the only way I've come to even find a sliver of compassion for them is understanding karma. Like understanding that every action has a reaction, and that everything that they're doing onto others is going to be done to them in some way.
Yeah, my guru would tell me this when I was like, I awakened to all this. I started seeing demons, all this crazy shit. And my guru, I was like, what the fuck do I do? This is horrible, this is depraved. And he was like, they can't feel love. Like, you feel for them, you know? Like, they have no idea what love is. Like, imagine that. Imagine having no idea what love is. I'm like, oh, shit.
Exactly. That's where love's needed the most, right? And so when we're hating or, you know, vigilante, like trying to bring justice to it, you know, I went that route first, and then just recognized, like, that's not my role in this life. To, you know, be Judge Dredd and bring justice to, I can raise awareness and do the inner work for me to those parts that need more love, support, and safety. And then that can ripple out, you know, especially as more and more people experience that. But it's the same thing that makes movies good. Like, why are we drawn to movies, right? It has a villain. It has like a dark, there's contrast, and there's conflict, and there's, you know, it's the same reason that we watch movies.
Yeah, if you think about our own awakenings, right? My shadow, the intensity of it dictated my ability to get to the light, right? Like, my shadow taking over and me living in that reality made me find the light internally. Yeah. And for hologram or a reflection of the collective, then it's the same, right? Like the more we veer into the shadow of humanity, the more we'll be awakened to the light. Doesn't make, I say that also knowing that it's not fun. Like it wasn't fun for me to be fucking like a place where I was like at the deepest, darkest shit. It's not fun.
Yeah.
But it is true that it's the only way we can find the light, unfortunately. I hope it's in an ideal world, in a different simulation or different parallel reality. I hope there's a world where that is not the case, but in this chessboard of life, this is the game. Like that's the rule, unfortunately. Is that like we learn through contrast.
Yep.
Like, do you ever think that could change, or do you think it's just like a universal law?
I think it can change. You know, everything in this realm's changing. I think an interesting quote from a sage was he was asked, you know, what is reality? Like, what is real? And he said, that which never changes. And so you think about this whole simulation, this earth plane, everything changes, you know, except for our eternal souls that are here on the ever expanding cusp of knowledge and learning and knowing thyself. So
yeah, no, it's true. It's for sure. That's what all like the gurus say, is that the only thing that you come and leave with is what's real, right? Is that your pure awareness, right? If you remove the thoughts and the beliefs and the identity, and you're just the objective observer of reality, like that's what stays and goes. That's the only thing that's real.
Yeah.
Then we attach to all these different things and think they're real.
And so how often do we connect with that part of us?
Most never.
The eternal, you know, all-knowing part that never changes, you know? Not enough.
People don't perceive it like that. Most people think that you only connect with that by like praying and going to church, but it's not that. Nothing against that, but it really is as simple as just being one with reality, just being present, just like observing things objectively, like that's as close as it gets, right? Like just being a true objective observer,
right?
With no subjective analysis.
And when you get good at that, then you can become the observer of thoughts too, and just watch them like waves, you know, instead of getting so entangled and pummeled by all the negative thoughts that we identify with. You could choose to, you know, I visualize it as like on my surfboard out past the breaker, and it's the seat of awareness, you know, just watching the waves, the thoughts. I'm like, oh yeah, I used to dive in on that thought. I used to drop in on that negative thought, and then it would be more negative waves. Example would be like, you know, I used to look in the mirror first thing in the morning, and I had a program where I would instantly look for the flaws.
That's me, bro.
Like look for, like me. What's wrong, or what, you know, is there a wrinkle here, or another gray hair? And so I got to observe that and have a good laugh about it. It's like, man, how long has that program been running? It was like something, you know, Windows 2007 that just needed to be upgraded, right? So as I got good at observing my thoughts, I had more fun with it, and just, you know, I was like, hey, gray hair, Sean Connery had gray hair as a sign of wisdom and sophistication. It's nice. And so then I'd ride those waves that feel better in my system. You know, I'm identifying with thoughts that feel good. And then you keep riding more of those waves. And then you feel like you're at one with nature. And it's a trip to remember that, you know, we're not our thoughts, but we get to choose which ones we identify with. A lot of people forget that and just keep going down the same negative default egoic problem solving, you know, patterns. And one way to get out of that, to end that, is just with powerful self-inquiry. You know, that the quality of the questions that we ask, that's why you're really good at this, enhances the quality of your life. Right? So even when you're dealing with a challenge, especially if you're going through something or in heavy emotions, like I always ask 3 questions. 1, how is this happening for me? And this goes back to answering your question earlier about how to get out of fear and victim mode. If you're asking questions of how is this happening for me, even if you're in it with like the most turbulence in the middle of a storm.
Or even if you don't want any part of it.
Yeah.
Or you don't agree with any of it.
Right.
Yeah.
That question then takes the mind off of the old negative default programs and onto like a Labrador dog, like playing fetch. You know, if they keep playing fetch with him, then he's not going to go dig holes in the backyard. So the same thing for the mind. Now it becomes a heat-seeking missile seeking answers to that question. Second question is, what needs to change, right? And usually, it could be, I need to quit drinking. That's not serving me anymore. Or I need to end this relationship, or, whatever. Those answers will come, even if they don't come instantaneously. Like, your mind's set as a heat-seeking missile to finding those answers. And then when you honor that and make that necessary change, then you're rewarded. It feels good in your system. Your body's like, and the third one is, what are the lessons to learn and the blessings to earn from this experience? And I've found that those three questions can help accelerate with more ease and grace through any challenge. Like through any, it's like the opposite is when we go into negative default programs and we're like, why is this happening to me? And then it just prolongs the experience of suffering much longer than necessary. So it's good to use the mind as an instrument of the heart.
Yeah, for sure. Where my mind goes to in this, I can do that when my nervous system is peaceful. I can, the thoughts come that are nefarious. I'm like, ha, ha, ha.
Right.
Good try, whatever's trying to. But then when I'm in a place where there's certain astrological things going on, or Mercury's in retrograde, I believe in that shit. It's all happening, and then, I haven't slept well, and there's, a machine gun of waves are just, not good. And, that's the moments where I personally, I think everyone finds it the hardest to, choose to not focus on them. So what do you do in those extreme situations where every wave you're catching is just shit? What the fuck do you in that moment? For me, it comes down to our earlier part of our conversation, which is just you're not feeling something, right? But
yeah.
So what's your answer to that? What do we do when all the waves are fucking shit?
Yeah, I've been there too. So I can relate in those initiations, even if, Mercury's in Gatorade or, and just feels comes in threes, right? Boom, boom, boom. I mean, my dog, was our first kind of baby, just died. We had to put him down a couple months ago. And after that was man, not only are we dealing with grief, and we're also it was just one thing after another, things just started falling apart. And the more I talked to people, it was very similar experiences and the challenges. And I just tune into, if I can breathe through it, I can get through it, right?
What does that mean, breathing through it?
Yeah, so if I use a breath, it's 4 seconds in, call it expansion breath because you're breathing in every direction instead of just anteriorly. 4 seconds in and 8 seconds out. And this naturally calms the nervous system, and that makes it easier to get out of fight or flight mode, which is usually where we're hanging out when, crap's hitting the fan, and into, a little bit closer to peace where you can be the observer again, right? And ask those important questions and see as the answers start getting revealed. And so those, I call them initiations. It's the ultimate dojo. When life's getting tough and you're getting thrown curveballs and everything's falling apart, that's when you get to really see what you're made of. That's the Navy SEAL training, the Jedi training.
Yeah.
And when we can see it that way and remember, oh yeah, I'm a soul, chose this human experience, and I didn't just choose the movie that's all bliss all the time.
Some did. I know some who did.
Yeah,
I didn't,
yeah.
But some do.
That movie might get a little boring.
Sure.
And
there's no, if you meet people like that, not to throw you off and change subjects, but it's there's no grit, there's no substance, there's no edge. They're just kind of nice all the time, and there's beautiful in that, but there's no you can't go to the deep end of the ocean with them.
That's why those initiations build character and grit, and I appreciate that because it's what makes the movie of my life, and as a creator, the things I get to create from that and alchemize, those challenges into meaningful conversations or new programs or, what's needed on the other end of that. That's choosing creator over consumption, and it's a game changer, when you can alchemize deepest depths of grief or the things we avoid the most and bringing light to that, then maybe it's not so scary for the next person, if they resonate with that and they're willing to go a little deeper into feeling what the messenger of anxiety has to share with them, and so they don't have to keep that stuck with them the whole
Where my
time.
mind goes now, you raised 3 beautiful questions that I'm sure many people are getting help from, but I kind of go with 2 in myself, 2 perspectives when I'm in that moment. It's like I kind of think one of God's love languages is testing you. I do believe that, like, because like if you peel back your evolution as this avatar in this dream or simulation, like the things that cause the most like XP points were the tests, right? So like you gain the most grit or personality or charisma through enduring shit, right? So it's like into some way you grew the most from the test. So it's like if I become better through the test and has some form of love here and something like tough love in some way. So I go there, what's on the other side of this initiation of like love and growth? And then I also go in those moments, I go to what can't I accept, right? I think so much of the suffering at the moment is like resisting what's true.
Yeah.
You're there being like you really can't accept what's going on. And that's always the first step for me, being like, can I accept what's actually happening? Even if I don't fucking like it at all, right?
Yeah.
Even if some chick's cheating on me or this business deal failed or my car crashed, like I have to accept this shit.
Yep. Absolutely. That's a big piece, because when we can accept it, then it's easier to see, the lessons and blessings in it. It's like, wow, I have to come to accept that like everything that I've been doing before is completely not working anymore.
Yeah.
Like, all right, it means there's a better way to do it. And then there's that like uncomfortable limbo of like, well, what is that way? And that's when it allows us the opportunity. That's why I use breath to calm and gain guidance, like connect with my higher self in those moments. It's like, hey, what's needed here? Like what's the way through, and it's those initiations and what gets to be created from them that makes, the movie of my life much more interesting than anything I'll find on Netflix,
What do you think is the main driver that doesn't allow us to accept reality in the moment? Is it as simple as not wanting to feel what's true? Like, what do you think is causing the lack of acceptance? Because I think most of us actually live in complete delusion, truly. I think like we're literally like not accepting anything to do with reality at all. Like I think that the opposite of divinity is call it Satanism or demonism, but it's the inverted truth, right? It's like opposite of truth. And most of us live in that space of this complete negligence of truth. So what do you think it is that makes people not want to accept the truth?
Truth hurts.
That's true.
Yeah, and there's a lot of there's a lot of mental egoic programs to try to keep us from getting hurt again, so that can keep people in a sort of like, ignorance is bliss, or not want to look at certain things. And then when the truth is revealed, it can be painful for a moment, but it's like so liberating, it's like, I'd rather know than not know. And, it's, I like to find bliss without ignorance, and I do that from going to the depths of the hardest stuff, the toughest emotions, sitting with anxiety to see what that has to share with me, and to live a fulfilling life. And so I think a lot of people, have different truths, and someone's truth could be completely different on the other side of the spectrum than mine. And yet, can we still have a conversation and learn from each other? That's what I feel like hasn't been happening enough. It's like the brainwashing of constantly needing to choose a side. Like, are you Democrat, you're Republican, you're on the blue team, the red team? This type of conditioning, like, makes it so many people forget, like, there's another choice. You don't have to choose sides. There's a way to, know your truth and still accept somebody else's experience and, be open to learning new things too,
I like being at a place now where I used to not be, where I'll just say what I know is true in my heart. And then they have, certain NPCs in this reality be like they have like a little like freak out mode. Like, what'd you just say? Like, oh, like vaccines are not killing, like all dumb shit. And you're like, what? But now in a place where it's like, I couldn't give a fuck, truly.
Yeah.
Like, if I know it to be truth and they're freaking out, like,
right.
It's not my problem. It's my truth. And on the other hand, if someone says something that would be triggering, like I don't get triggered. I think I often say this on the podcast that the more divided you are in the political spectrum, or any ideology, whether it be religion or anything may be, it just your nervous system's fucked up, right? Like, if you're getting triggered intensely over someone's opinion, like that in and of itself is pretty crazy. Like, someone's 5 words about reality are ruining your day.
Right.
It's like, what the fuck? And I was that person. I was that person. I'd hear someone disagree with me, I'd be like, oh, I get freaked out. Yeah. But now it's just like, who the fuck cares, right? Because even if I feel discomfort from my body, it doesn't throw me off. I'm cool. I'm good. Someone says something I don't agree with, it's cool.
Right. And that's the ego at play anytime there's the need to be right, or like assert that, no, this is right, you're wrong. That's like instantly bringing up the defensive gloves, and then it brings up, the emotions, and then there's not actually a lot of communication going on. It's just a battle of who's right or who's wrong.
Yeah, in a political debate, it's simple, but where we can move this conversation towards now, where it's harder is relationships, right? Where I've experienced it where there's 2 truths at once, right? Yeah. There is an objective truth, but 2 people are feeling 2 different truths. Yeah. And that can be really tough in a relationship, especially. How do you manage that, right? When you're confronting an issue, 2 lovers, you're queen and king, and there's 2 complete different perspectives on what the truth is. How does one go about that process? Yeah,
it's a great question. I think it requires a higher level of communication. So first being, seeking to understand before the need to be understood. So like really diving in with presence to, well, what is their experience and their truth? And even if it's so far from what you think happened, or, what your experience is, then having a level of curiosity about that, and that's not negating that, not gaslighting that, just like, wow, that's their experience. And so that's true for them. And mine's totally different, but acceptance of that. And then, appreciation for the diversity at play. We all have such diverse perspectives that can you find appreciation for the fact that we're not all the same, thank God. That would be a pretty boring existence.
That's what ego wants. Like you want to date someone who thinks exactly like you, and you're like, why the fuck would I want that, right? You peel back, it's like, who the fuck would want to date my exact mind?
Right. That's why they say opposites attract. But it keeps it interesting. So upgraded communication, and even, if there's something that you want to discuss that's one of those like conversations that needs to be addressed, but we put it off because we think it's going to go bad, or, use up all this bandwidth until you actually have the conversation, and then find out that it was actually an opportunity to connect even deeper and understand each other better. So there's, you can give one thing that every human being would love more of, as you're having those conversations, and that's appreciation. We'd all appreciate more appreciation, and so we don't give that enough. We've been taught, everybody knows the saying, if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say it at all, right? Well, what about the caveat to that, which is probably even more important? If you have anything nice to say, make sure as heaven that you say it. Like, why do we hold back compliments or appreciation? Yep. So, just by even tackling, a conversation like that, if you need to address the meat, you could sandwich it with appreciation, share something you appreciate about them, and then tackle, the conversation piece that needs to be addressed. And then when you come to resolution or understanding, then top it off with, man, I appreciate that we can have these conversations and that you're open to this, and we can evolve in this way.
Where my mind goes is that what's frequently discussed is you have a big argument with a partner, and it often goes to makeup sex, right? Like, it's like a trivial thing we look past, but it's actually kind of beautiful that what makeup sex is like you're experiencing the contrast to the division, right? You're returning to love. And there's something in that, right? Whenever you have,
Yeah.
it's not fun having the fucking argument and not agreeing and not being the nicest to each other. But when you return back to love, you realize the power of it in some ways. That's like another example of the contrast, right? That like fighting isn't fun, but when you resolve it, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's that strange way. But to go back to your expertise on peace, I think one of the biggest things, if I talk to anyone really, especially people my age, we're all dumb when it comes to dating my age, unfortunately. You ask anyone what's like their main stress, it's always to do with fucking relationships. It's some guy being like, oh, these chicks don't understand me, like I can't get laid, or a girl being like, all these guys are assholes and fuckboys. Like, it always is something to do with dating, right? So like, why has love become the most unpeaceful thing possible for us?
Good question. Love comes in many forms. And as far as dating, it's interesting because there's programs running with that too, based on our beliefs, which are just thoughts that we continue thinking. So if like a girl says, man, there's just no good guys in this whole city, just no good guys. If that's her belief that she keeps affirming, then her reticular activation system, literally the mind's like looking for proof of that. So she'll attract a bunch of D-heads, or like whatever. And to provide evidence of that being true for her, right? But if you shift that belief into, looking inward, resolving some of the, layers that want to be healed, and then open to, all the amazing men, or even just one that could actually meet her where she's at, that is kind, that is loving, that is exciting, that's, has a lot to offer, then she can attract that in pretty quick. So it's interesting when it comes to dating. I think a lot of people go into relationships with codependency issues. And I think that's a lot of the, kind of misguided love. It's like, well, I need this from you to make me feel complete, or vice versa. And then it becomes like these trauma bonds that, can be very volatile and in an opportunity for healing, right? There's a lot of expression, a lot of passion. But if you want to heal codependency so that you don't need this thing from other people, then it involves sitting with loneliness, like deep in the depths of loneliness, and see what you can discover there. And when you're not afraid of that anymore, like for me, when I sat with that, I discovered gold. It was like, man, I realized like, how long has it been since I've given myself this much time to myself?
And it isn't that bad.
Yeah. And, well, it was uncomfortable, but temporarily.
Yeah, but once I've been there too. But what I realized is like, if your worst nightmare is being alone, right? Like always, it's good for fear, right? Your worst fear is X.
Yeah.
Like experience X.
Exactly.
You'll see it's fucking nothing, right? So I was like, I can't be alone all the time. I did it. I was like, this isn't that. Maybe I'd rather a beautiful woman next to me, but this isn't that bad, right? Worst case, it's whatever. And it's like the pressure lifted.
Right, because when you can enjoy your own company and find the gold in the depths of loneliness as that uncomfortable feeling dissolves, and it can be so uncomfortable that the mind's like, get out of here, like go stuff it with something in the fridge, go on Instagram and find some dopamine, like anything but this feeling, right? But if you just let all that subside and just sit with it, you'll find deeper self-discoveries and sovereignty. And in sovereignty, then you can attract like attracts like. You can attract someone that's also sovereign. And then it's like, wow, we come together. It's like, I don't need you, but wow, we sure enhance each other's lives. And we can choose to be with each other or not.
I've been doing this new podcast where it's me and like 3 girls my age. I'm basically interviewing them about modern dating, like their experience, analyzing them.
Nice.
And all of them are always like, it's a trauma bond. Like I see it immediately, right? It's always some kind of douche who doesn't want to commit to them, and it's like validating their own experience being fatherless, usually. But in that, I think about them, or people like me. I was like, it's an interesting question to ask. It's a tough question to answer, but it's like, do we need to experience a trauma bond? Like, do we have to go through it to know we don't want it, right? Like, or is there a way to not desire a trauma bond without experiencing it, right? Because in my life, I had to go through it, right?
Sure.
I had to experience, there's no knock to them, the the trauma bonds to realize that I can't do this, right? Like it's not a nourishing experience. So I have to experience the contrast
right,
to then appreciate the light. Like a lot of women who end up marrying good dudes, or not nice guys aren't good dudes, but like a good man.
Yeah.
It's just after they experience the opposite of that, right? Where they get to a place where like, I can't do this shit. I can appreciate the good man, right? The nice kid in high school, the nerd, eventually ends up winning when he's 30, 40 because they end up wanting to appreciate him. So how do you answer that? Do you think we have to go through the trauma bond, or we can do something to not experience it?
Everybody's experience is different. You know, I can just share from mine. I had to go through that initiation and the uncomfortableness of meeting the depths of loneliness and discovering more of myself there, and heal my abandonment wound before I could call in my queen as two sovereign beings, you know? So that was, I wouldn't change that part of the journey, you know? But I sure, you know, have compassion for the younger Charles 1.0 that was codependent in relationships. And yeah, like you said, it's, you know, contrast is great for learning. It's like, thanks for the contrast. I know more what I don't want, and now I'm more clear on what I do want.
This podcast sponsor is EONS. EONS uses a blend of adaptogenic mushrooms, nootropics, and biotechnology to help solve the issues of sleep, anxiety, gut health, and productivity. EONS is nature's technology. These here are the sleep gummies. Anyone I give these sleep gummies to falls asleep immediately and all their insomnia and sleep issues go away. Check out eons.com to get their supplements. How did, beyond just learning to be independent, how did you actually heal the codependency? Was it like, did you have to, was it automatic in your relationship? It was just that way, or did you have to start like you get triggered on the way and have to implement it? And then what level, is there ever hyper independence? Like, are there ever shit that has to be codependent? I think about that sometimes where it's like, is it as simple as just two completely independent beings, or there has to be some level of codependence on like minute scales?
Yeah, I mean, the more variables you add to the equation too, the more interesting it gets. When you have, you know, with kids and dogs and all the things, it's it becomes more of, I see it as like an interdependence, you know, where like we can work really well as a team, you know, and that way things can be in harmony and peace, and then curveballs are thrown and there's chaos and you know, everything falls apart. And that's literally always happening. There's always chaos that leads to order, and then order that leads to chaos. And so we've just been taught and conditioned that order is good, and we always need order. But the real training's in the chaos, you know?
For
so
sure.
if you can, you know, enter that dojo with more curiosity, then and you can find peace in the eye of the storm of chaos, then you don't have to just always seek order. You know, you can just watch how that naturally unfolds throughout nature and within us. So
yeah, one thing I've been integrating recently is the importance of staying centered amidst the highs and lows, right? We only think about the lows, right? Like not losing our cool when things aren't going our way. But for me, it was like what I came down to, I think most people deal with in this capitalist society is nothing against capitalism, but it's like I'll only like feel good when it's like I'm accomplishing X, right? The money's coming in, the likes coming in, the followers coming in, the women are coming in, right? Then I feel good. But then I was like, okay, if I let that lift me up, then the opposite, that's gonna lift me down. So now I'm at a place where it's like, how can I stay exactly the same amidst the highs and lows, right? Like the money and likes can come, the woman can come, but I'm not gonna be different, right? Or things can be terrible. Like my Instagram engagement gets shadow banned, which did happen, and I'm fine, right? Like I think it's an undervalued skill nowadays is like stay cool amidst the highs and lows. Like don't attach to any of it.
Right. That's the Tao, the way, the middle way, you know, because I learned that the hard way too. I would just bounce off extremes, you know, whether it was like going out, overeating, you know, I always like got to name these parts of my psyche. You know, the first one was just Pac-Man. It was just the overconsumer. Yeah, I'll go out with the guys for a drink. That turns into 4 or 5, and then we eat way too much. And
most men are Pac-Man these days, unfortunately. It's a good name for it.
Total like consumption, right? Like over consuming. And before I got to know that part of my psyche, I was just bouncing off extremes. I'd wake up feeling like crap, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to detox and just fast for a long time. And then I would do that for a while, and then it was like, okay, back to binging. And that takes a lot of energy, right? Until I found the way. And one thing that helped me with that was actually getting to know those roommates in my head, and gave him a name, Pac-Man, a visual, right? So I could see when he's like trying to take the wheel. And then understanding his purpose is really big, right? These like characters, these parts that come online in our psyche, his purpose is to make sure that I'm not missing out on all the pleasure and the good stuff and the juiciness of life, right? So knowing that, I can appreciate that part and have a little more compassion and love for that character in my mind. And that way, I'm way more aware when he's starting to take the wheel, and I can have a little inner dialogue. It's like, we're going out for a drink, and Pac-Man's like, well, the drink's almost gone. Let's get another one. And I'm like, I see you, appreciate you. I know you want to make sure we fully enjoy this experience. Let's just allow this drink to be like it's our last, and be a food drink connoisseur. Like, we smell it, enjoy every flavor, texture, and just take it slow. And he's like, in more enjoyment? Awesome. So then he's cool, takes the back seat. Now my higher self's driving more often. There's a lot of those voices in the head. There's the Judge Dredd, that wants to like instantly find flaws in people you meet, or if they're full of shitza or not, and that part I have appreciation for too, because it goes so far back to the wiring, like medieval days. We used to have to know real quick, like, you used to have that internal judger. Is this person friend or foe? Are they an ally, or are they going to try to kill me and take my resources, right? So that is literally like a character in my mind that I get to observe, as I meet people, and just by getting to know that part, I can turn online my lens of seeing more of the greatness and the good things in everyone and everything. And it's cool, because as I got to know that part, the judger, then it's like, now I have a gift of seeing the greatness in others and potential already actualized. And it's pretty cool, because it invites them to just step into that. If they want.
I think about my awareness as like an orchestra conductor, right? Because like on one level, like there's two levels. To one level, it's like you are like choosing, you're dictating the noise of which part, right? And another level, you're training the parts, right? So it's like all our parts, there's good parts and bad parts wrong, where there's shadow parts, right? Sure. And I do believe there's massive gifts in each shadow part. You can find it, right? But it's like the conductor, like bringing out the best in it, being like your higher self, your awareness, being like, okay, I see you're doing this. Let's try and bring out this good note, right? And finding that positive. I think that's like that's the core of the human experience in a way, is like finding the parts of yourself that aren't serving you, and then like training them to bring the best out of you, like find the gems in them. Before, I don't want to forget this part of your story, I want to touch upon it, is that your experience healing your back, that's something that touched me. You healed it, said, naturally, and through feeling your emotions. So I'm a believer, and I do believe that it's against the mainstream medical system, even though I think it's bullshit, that most of our disease, even bones, broken bones, it's mostly just unprocessed sensation. Right. So I'd love to touch on your experience, how it happened, what happened, and then how do you heal it?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that the medical industry wouldn't benefit from people healing themselves much.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So
it's literally completely against the business model, like literally.
Totally. So 2008, talk about initiations. This was my most painful physically. Up in Mammoth Mountain, snowboarding with two buddies, full on blizzard. It was like insane. The snow was coming every direction. You could barely see a tree like 10 feet in front of you. It was a blur. And we had already made it to the top of the mountain, and they shut down the lifts because it was so dangerous. And we don't see anybody else up there. We're just kind of look at each other. We're like, well, let's charge. And so we were snowboarding through this white abyss. And it was super fun until about halfway down the mountain, I went off a jump that I didn't know was there. And I found myself in midair, complete white eye. I have no idea where the landing is, or, felt like I just went off a cliff. And when I hit, it was like a lightning bolt just hit me in the low back. It was the most excruciating pain like instantaneously, I was at like a level 11 out of a 10 scale, and I'm yelling to my friends, hoping they could hear me. They were already down ahead of me. I look at my phone. My phone's dead. And I'm looking around going, I'm in big trouble here. Like, I'm in the middle of this mountain in a blizzard at excruciating pain. And it's in those moments, like, channeled like the inner Spartan warrior, and was able to just click my board off and sit on it for a while and like slide down as far as I could. I'd keel over and kind of breathe into the pain for a while, and then eventually made it down the mountain. Still couldn't stand up straight. I went and saw doctors and didn't like what they were saying. And so I got multiple opinions, showed me x-rays, MRIs, and they're showing me how jacked up my spine was. And they said, you're going to need surgery, maybe multiple, or you'll never move the same again. And even in a fight or flight state, someone that appreciates these sensory suits so much, I was like, that is not my path. And followed my intuition to opting out of that, going under the knife. And
what did you opt out of? Was it like a reconstruction? Like, what was the actual surgery?
Yeah. So, I had herniated discs, and they wanted to go in and do a number of things. I was just, I was kind of like zoning it out. I don't even remember the details of it, because I was just knew like the energy of that was like giving my power over, and I knew there was a better way. And so I chose the self-healing path, which wasn't easy. That meant like sitting in my apartment by myself. I could barely crawl to the bathroom. I was in so much pain. And I finally just like had to sit there with all the emotions that I had not processed earlier, fear, whether I'd move the same again, shame, whether I could like ever be productive again, let alone stand up straight. Just grief, from losing my mom earlier, that I hadn't let those tears fall. And in that moment, I just surrendered to all of it. And in like a pool of tears, on the other end of a good cry is like, it's like crystal clarity, and I just felt super clear. Even though I was still in pain, I was like, man, I'm going to drop into meditation with the intention of receiving all answers to healing this naturally. And during that meditation, it was a meditation by Abraham Hicks. Literally while in meditation, a friend that I hadn't heard from in 2 years texted me and said, hey, I heard your back's in bad shape. Check out NKT, Neurokinetic therapy, the work of David Weinstock. And I was like, took me down this rabbit hole of studying all his work. Guy's genius. And I got him on the phone. I was like, man, I think you can help me. I'm in bad shape. He's like, I'm in the Bay. I'll set you up with my top student in San Diego where you're at. So I went and met Christina, and I walked in looking like Shakira stuck in a mid-hip dance move, hips over to one side, upper bodies to the other. And that was representative of how out of alignment I was with my purpose at that time. I was a trainer then, taking on 10 clients a day sometimes, running on coffee, and then going out on the weekends and partying. And so something had to give. And the universe gave me lots of feathers. My body was like, hey, you might want to make some changes here, Didn't pay attention to that. Got a couple bricks in the head, the equivalent of like a bad hangover. Oh, I should make some changes. But then those changes didn't last. And that's when I found myself on the mountain and really got broken open and had my first session. She got me on the table, started testing muscles, tested my glutes, just had me push down on my foot, and nothing was working there. I was like, wow, that's weird. My glutes aren't firing. She's like, yep, all form, no function. She had a good sense of humor. And she had me clench my jaw and then retest the glutes, and all of a sudden they're strong again. I was like, whoa, that's interesting. So the jaw was connected to the glutes because this was the neurological traffic jam. My jaw was blocking that signal from getting to the glutes. Later to find out, jaw, we tend to carry a lot of resentment, anger, even revenge energy there, and it could become a neurological block. So she's putting these gloves on. She's like, I know we just met, but I'm going to have to go in your mouth. I said, what? She said, I'm just going to release your jaw. So it was so painful and achy. But after that, I could literally feel like some neural pathways coming back online. And sure enough, my glutes were firing again. And she did that for a couple other compensation patterns we found. I got off the table and was standing up straight. I was like, whoa, this works. this is my path. I'm going to come see you every week. Studied all of David Weinstock's courses, live with him, got to be friends, and became a neurokinetic therapist. Totally changed the trajectory and started my own healing practice then.
How would you define neurokinetic therapy?
Yeah, so muscle testing, we can test any muscle in the body, and it's essentially seeing, if it's firing properly, then it's strong. You get a good, strong test. If it's not, then it's weak, right? And then you can take that to another level when you introduce or use supplements or foods. You can hold them close to you and muscle test to see if it's actually helping you, making you strong, or if it's making you weak. I saved a ton of money on supplements when I got good at muscle testing, because I realized like 70% of what I had in the cupboard was no bueno for my body. Yeah. And so once you can test to see where there's weakness in the body, then you can begin to get answers from the body, right? If something's weak, then something else in the body is compensating for it, right? So then you can use a little Sherlock Holmes, and we can identify what muscles are overcompensating for it. And once we get that information from the body, then we can show you how to correct it. Because when you release the muscles that are overfiring, like my jaw in that case, then you go right to strengthening the muscles that were weak. Then it's reconnecting that circuitry. So you're improving your neuromuscular efficiency and you're restoring function in the body. And when you restore function in the body, then there's no need for the check engine light, pain. So it became a huge tool in my toolkit for healing.
Where does feeling emotions play into this?
Yeah, so that's great you asked, because I kept seeing a lot of the same common denominators. People would feel really good for weeks at a time after turning on muscles that weren't firing, correcting these compensation patterns. But there were a couple of things that were still unaddressed. One, the emotional element with pain, right? Because energy in motion, if it's not, it becomes stuck and shows up as issues in our tissues, and then it'll be a check engine light with pain. The other element is the metaphysics. So what's going on in our life, the thoughts we're thinking and the feelings we're feeling, and the stories that are running, that are manifesting what's showing up in our body. And that's actually a huge piece that I added, because that element helps us get a lot of answers as to why this is happening for us, and the lessons and blessings that we can learn from it. And when you understand the lessons and the blessings from your pain, then it doesn't need to keep showing up, over and over and over again. Like, I get to go snowboarding now and do all the things I love and feel strong as ever.
So do you believe there's a curriculum in every injury?
A curriculum in every injury? Every situation's a little different, but there is definitely a protocol that helps immensely. It's the first thing I ask people is, do you want to heal this? And they're like, well, yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm like, I know it sounds obvious, but some people hold a lot of stories of why not to heal that. That pain has given them some sort of payoff, right? Like it's given them compassion from others, or attention from others, or support, right? So there's stories running, and by declaring that they're ready and willing to heal this now, then we can begin our work. And just reminding them that you are your own greatest healer. Nobody knows your body, your soul like you. Just have some really potent and powerful self-healing tools.
I meant more so, like, do you think there's always an energetic teaching to be made from an injury?
Oh, yeah.
You believe
Absolutely. That? Yeah. I don't think they happen by mistake or just by coincidence at all. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because no matter where it shows up on the body, it's given you clues as to why that's happening for you.
Yeah. Just the last couple of minutes, I've refused to heal my ankle. That's my part in this all my shit. My right ankle's destroyed. I haven't done anything about it. And I don't know why, but I just kind of always push it off. Yeah. Yeah.
So ankles metaphysics oftentimes are like not fully receiving pleasure, not allowing, like, it has a lot to do with receiving pleasure. And if there's any like blocks to that, there's a lot more to that, to ankles, but that's one piece that makes sense. Remember.
Like whenever I get into a place of like pure like workaholism, or like just like stoicism and all this shit, my ankle will flare up. So makes sense.
Interesting.
It makes sense.
Which is pretty cool, because then that's a sign from your body that, hey, there's more pleasure you get to enjoy.
I attracted the initial one because I was, so not to fucking bore you to death, but I came to the US from the UK at like 13, and I was playing fucking cricket and rugby, right? So it was like I came into American high school when I was a loser, right? Because I got basketball and I was like, what the fuck is this thing, right? I don't know what to do. I'd like shoot and miss the whole thing. And then the girls would laugh. I had no friends. I was like, okay, the only way I can get validation is being good at fucking basketball. So I trained my ass off, and then by my senior year, I was one of the best players, right? Just off that, like, it taught me a lot. But in that, it was like this, like, it wasn't fun. It was like my only way to receive validation. Right? My dad would love me more if I scored 20.
Right.
Girls would like me. It showed me like that's how life works, right? We think that like this performing well externally to make us like have all these things. So I was like so fucking brutal. My whole happiness would depend on my basketball performance, right? Because I felt like it was the only way I can gain validation. My third game in, when I was like trying to play in college, my ankle just snapped, all the ligaments torn. But then I could actually find what it was worth loving. I could enjoy my fucking life. So I called it in for that reason. I see it now. But now it's time to have to heal it now.
That's great awareness. Yeah. And, and then, so the metaphysics, the emotional component, and the physiology, and we address the physiology with the NKT, the muscle testing, get answers from the body. But it's been fascinating, man. I geek out on this stuff. These human bodies are such a gift to call home for such a short time.
It's one of the things that fascinates me the most, that people are still completely ignorant to, that frustrates me, is that the correlation between disease, injury, and emotional trauma. Like, it's just like a super fucking untapped department in health. That's the most important thing, truly. Like, I do believe, like, my mom died of lung cancer. I know my heart, it was unprocessed grief for sure. Yeah. And it's just like not discussed, right? You go to a hospital, the doctor's like, oh, you have this shit, here's fucking chemo. And like, it might work sometimes, but there's no complete understanding of the role that our emotional lives play in it. And it's the most important thing in my experience. So
I couldn't agree more. And my condolences. That's the same thing with my father, lung cancer. That's what I was saying, unprocessed grief. Yeah. As we know in Chinese medicine, the lungs associated with grief.
It happened. Her mom died. Wow. And then she got it, right? So just like, it's crazy how that actually happens.
Yeah. That I think more and more people are waking up to this. And
the mainstream isn't, which is what's fucking so frustrating, right? There are books coming out, like I read one by Gabor Mate that's just about this. The whole thing's about how our emotion trauma dictates our health and our cells. But like, you go to fucking like the highest, Harvard Medical School and Columbia Medical School, and they're all like, you're retarded. So you tell them this, it's just like, and
they're
trying to give me 4 boosters as well. So it's like, they're all dumb. So
even my queen bee, she went through her whole master's program for psychotherapy, and was like, what? You guys never addressed energy? Like, no, you're missing out a huge piece here. Like, so she was called to, the Academy of Intuitive Medicine, and led by Francesca, who's like a modern day white witch. She's amazing, and teaching you how to clear energy and, energetic hygiene. This should be like taught in schools, right? And for sure, to come back into, I call it sovereign chi, filling up with your own life force energy, returning to sender, anything 3D debris that's not yours. And then also how to access your psychic abilities. So it's very cool school. And then
which we all have, that we repress.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's actually what a lot of the like schizophrenic and like, bipolar,
they're tapped
people
in.
That
I'm bipolar. And I used to like think it was like, I'm fucking like this like insane disease person. But when I'm manic, bro, I'm fucking like a G. I see everything. I don't go there because it's not like, I can go there and I start seeing everything. Like literally, it's like I see everything you could possibly imagine. But then I'm like dead for like a month, so it's like not worth it. But but it's all like schizophrenic people are tapped in somewhere. Like it's all
exactly. And it's sad that those gifts aren't recognized, and instead it's seen as this like
disease
that's tough to deal with. So they put them off in a psych ward, and like it's just a really weird protocol that are,
Yeah, I think there has to be some integration. I do believe that like there's, I think even if you have access to spiritual wisdom, you have to deal with your psyche. Like the unconscious is a whole different beast, like beyond like spirituality. And then the spirituality is a whole different beast compared to the unconscious. So I think the middle ground for me has been like, I had to, I'm grateful I learned a lot about the psyche and the unconscious and my work in Jungian psychology, but then also my spiritual education with certain mentors. Like I think we all have to understand both worlds, right? We have a psyche that has its own evolution, but we also are fucking spiritual beings. And we have to understand some kind of middle ground in both of them, not one or the other. I think there's right now it's either it's all spiritual woo stuff, which is I believe in it all, but like you also have a psyche, and then people who are only about the psyche who ignore the spirituality. So there has to be some. That's my intention in this. Actually, it's just like breeding some kind of middle ground between
both. Bridge the gap. Yeah. A lot of people spearheading bridging that gap between like the science and spirituality, even like realizing that's all. Explaining the same thing in a lot of ways. Yeah, for sure. Well, I have to wrap it up there, but thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experiential wisdom. That the backstory is just, it's hard to go through that, but it's also just beautiful evidence of what we're trying to confirm, right? Like you live that experience. It's different for me to say, like, oh, feeling your emotions and connecting your whole body together heals you, but you've fucking been in it. So thank you for giving that evidence. And where can people find you and learn more about your work? CharlesClay.coach. Really simple. There's a free gift for everybody there to reclaim your full sovereignty. As soon as you enroll or subscribe at the bottom, then you'll get that 22-minute guided movement, breath work, visualization practice that I use every morning to just fill up with my own life force energy. It's amazing, good morning ritual, or when you're just feeling off with your energy. So it's a cool gift to get there. And then those on Instagram can reach out, CharlesClay.coach. Happy to connect. Shoot me a message if any of this resonates. And while there's space available, I can offer 15-minute support calls for free. Great. Thank you, man. Absolutely. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to watch more content, please click this video right here and don't forget to subscribe right here. Thank you.